Welcome back. Thanks again for joining us. Well, yesterday, Brand South Africa and Brand Finance Africa announced the country's top 50 corporate brands. That announcement was made in Houghton, Johannesburg. The third annual study, Brand Africa Finance, found that the top 50 corporate brands in the country are valued at, listen to this, approximately 1.5 trillion rand, right? With many of these companies also contributing to national priorities, including uplifting identified and targeted communities. Speaking to us now, Thebe Ikalafeng, he's the chairman of Brand Finance Africa. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me up this early, Ayanda.
Well, you know what? If you've made it this far, then the day looks brighter from here on. So you should thank us, really, actually.
Thank you so much.
I'm kidding. Thank you so much for coming through. Let's talk about that figure. It looks quite impressive, but what does it mean? Has there been growth in terms of the figures over the past 3 years that you've tracked?
Well, indeed, we've grown by 340 to 370 billion. If you look at South African homemade brands, it really speaks to the strength of those brands in South Africa. You look at the retail sector, which has grown by 23%. You look at the insurance, has grown by 18%. Of course, we are growing. That's what it says.
This positive trajectory, is it indicative then of maybe a growth in entrepreneurial spirits here in South Africa? What does it symbolize on the ground?
Well, South Africa has always been at the forefront of creating homemade brands. It says the retail industry is quite buoyant. It says South African entrepreneurs are at it. They're creating great made in South Africa brands. But it also says the potential of this country to grow if we all come together and we do the right thing.
Tell us about the top performers.
Well, the top performers, number one is MTN, although it's declined by 4%, and right on its back is Vodacom at number 2, and Vodacom has grown by 9%, and then Sasol, but Sasol has also declined by 12% because of international oil prices. But MTN and Vodacom, I think that's an interesting story because those have always been the two giants of South African telecommunications. And of course, Vodacom is the strongest South African telecommunications brand, and what helps MTN is the international footprint, the international receipts. But of course, those are under pressure as well.
I mean, I can just imagine one or two viewers complaining, asking whether or not it will translate in lower data charges for cell phones. But that's a conversation for another day. Other top performers, which is quite ironic, I think, Woolworths. You mentioned that Woolworths is also in there, even despite the boycott diversity movement there and attempts to stay away from Woolworths. They've done quite well.
Well, other than looking at the most valuable brands in South Africa, what we do in the study as well, we try and extract the strongest brands in South Africa. And Woolworths is tied with F&B for the two strongest brands in South Africa. Now, F&B has been the strongest brand in South Africa for the last 4 years in a row, but we know what they've done. We know what they've done, are leveraging and pushing and promoting themselves as the technology-oriented brand or the cutting-edge, new-age banking brand. Woolworths, similarly, their retail fronts, their product quality and product selection, and really they are ingrained when it comes to being the brand that serves the middle class of the growing middle class of South Africa.
Or the lazy people like Ayanda who don't want to cook.
People like you and I, we don't have time to
microwave.
cook. I don't think we don't want to cook. I think we just don't have time to cook.
It's just, yes, thank you. Let's use that as an excuse.
Plus, they've got better recipes that you and I can put together.
One day I will cook one of those like 6-course meals, and you'll be very impressed. But in the banking sector, the new kid on the block, Capitec, also holding its own?
What a phenomenal story Capitec is. They've grown by 63% brand value year on year. It is the biggest growth, or the only other brand that comes close is Woolworths at 53%. So Capitec, of course, what they've done, they've really been the disruptor brand in financial services. Not having any historical baggage, they've been able to innovate. They've been able to break down the barriers of financial services, making it easy for the ordinary man with a lower income to be able to access financial services products.
Touching on, someone who's on the ground, perhaps someone with not a lot of resources, let's talk about CSI, corporate social investment. Lots of money being thrown about. Is the private sector coming to the party, partnering perhaps with government and making sure that they give back?
Well, the private sector has always been partnering with government to do it, but private sector have always done it on their own. I mean, if you look at a big initiative like Lead SA from Prime Media 702, which is private sector, I mean, that's a private sector initiative. That's a CSI, if you will. Just this past July 18th, summit at Kilimanjaro, and in summit in Kilimanjaro with your Leanne Manas, we raised millions as private people going up the highest mountain in Africa for girls who don't have access to sanitary pads. That's a private sector initiative. But if you look at all these banks, you look at all these businesses in the top 50, all of them are involved in some form or another in some CSI, including the MTNs and Vodacoms, who all have very formidable foundations which invest in the communities they serve. CSI is not a nice to have. CSI is a license to operate, because if you don't look after all your stakeholders, and your stakeholders being your customers and being the communities they come from, you will not have an opportunity to have any further future customers.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I see what you did there. You first started by mentioning our competition, and then you said, oh, and Leanne from Morning Live too. It's a nice comeback.
I have to be balanced.
No, I like that. Thank you so much. Thebe Ikalafeng, the chairman of Brand Finance Africa. My thanks to you, and thank you for joining us. A quick ad break. Morning Live continues after this. Stay with us.